So two things. Just a brief introduction for myself. This whole idea of the two-way audience is something that we as an organisation have embraced and utterly believe in. But it's also been, I'd say, the single hardest thing that we've had to get to grips with as we've engaged online. And one of the things lots of people talk about with newspapers and going on the web is things about immediate content and video and audio but basically the way you produce your content. And that's difficult, but it's actually doable. But dealing with being in the middle of a blog storm about something you've written, or having 5,000 people send in emails to complain about you, or having your finest journalist being flagrantly insulted on your talk boards is actually a whole new set of challenges we've had to learn. So that's the way I come at this, and the way we're going to talk about it today is I've got a fantastic panel who I'll ask to introduce themselves, is really just to think about, one, how we are changing the way we do business on a day-to-day basis because of the two-way audience, some of the operational and practical challenges about it, and also the financial issues. You know, where's the money in this? Where's the value for going through what is actually quite a considerable effort? And so I just want everyone to sort of kick off by introducing themselves, but also just to talk about how they've seen, you know, in the last 2 years, really, how they've seen things change in terms of a two-way audience and how that's affected their businesses. Toby, you might want to kick off.
Sure. Hi, I'm Toby Coppel. I run Yahoo's European business. And how has our business changed? Well, I mean, in addition to just embracing a lot of the tools that allow us to have conversations and our users to have conversations with each other around the content and around the applications that we provide, we try to go further, which is to try to take the data that they provide us and the information they provide us and just make all of our services so much better. Consumers are dealing with a sea of information. They have less time than ever to deal with it. And we are really trying to take things like Delicious, that today has, you know, hundreds of millions of URLs in its database, and using the tagging and all the metadata associated with our user activity around Delicious to actually make the results in our search engine better by taking the quality that's associated with a link that someone's provided the information about. Take Flickr, that today, you know, has 60 million users and 3 billion photos, 3 million photos uploaded a day, and taking all the metadata around that and helping improve all of our services so that when someone is looking for some relevant content in sports and someone's tagged some great Arsenal photos, bringing those up from the game last night. So making all of our services so much more relevant by using and understanding the conversation and bringing that metadata back into our services. And that's probably the biggest and broadest change we can bring, because the challenge we're all dealing with is, with all this information, is how do you personalize it and bring relevance to our users? How do they sort through all this information? And so doing that in an intelligent way and improving our services because of our access to the two-way conversation, that's really a key part of our strategy.
Okay. Demo.
My name's Denmark West. I'm the president of digital media at BET, a subsidiary of VivaKi focused on the African-American audience. Similar answer. I think a different perspective, but similar answer. I think that my perspective is that if you look back a couple of years, at least from where I was sitting, actually, just to be fair, I was at MTV 2 years ago looking at BET as opposed to working there. I sort of joke that I'm part of the Viacom executive rotation program, but for those of you who know the Viacom structure, you know how funny that is. But I think that the point that I'd make, though, is that 2 years ago, what we were looking at across all of our properties is that there was this experience that was gaining a lot of traction in terms of the participation and creation of media that seemed to be separate from what we were doing in our sort of traditional content setting. And over time, that quickly evolved to a space where it wasn't something that you wanted to do simply on a social networking or social media or blog site. It was something that you wanted to do everywhere as an audience member. And because of that, it quickly became the new bar for what was an acceptable content experience. or frankly, an acceptable web experience. You not only wanted to access content, you wanted to be able to participate, and to a certain extent, you wanted to be able to create, especially where it was applicable. So to a large degree, that means that we had to change a lot of the way that we actually offered our experience. So not only on the MTV side, but on the BET side, it means we had to not only redesign the experience in terms of look and feel, but it means that we had to actually rethink what we were trying to do with respect to the audience. So now it's not just something that we do as a part of a blog or a community. It's something that we do throughout the site experience because we actually want to engage at every level as opposed to just in a specific room that's marked community or blog or whatever. That's the first point. You know, the bar was reset. I think that the second point is that we've really taken the concept of the talkback and we've sort of used it in the context of a broader set of questions. The first question is, who are you listening to? You know, the second question is, well, what exactly are you listening for? And then the third question is, where are you actually listening for it? And so, you know, relatively simple questions, but relatively nuanced answers. The first question in terms of who are you listening to? Well, there's a complexity to this argument, which, you know, Simon's going to get to, which is you're not only going to listen to the audience, but you're going to listen to the people who pay you, and that's usually going to be your advertisers. And it's how do you actually take what works for the audience and have it work for the advertiser? The second question in terms of what you're listening for, well, it's a combination of things that people actually tell you explicitly and things that you actually derive implicitly. So there's a lot of work that you do at first from a research perspective that helps you figure out directionally where you want to go. And then the people talking back to you is actually a way to refine the approach. Now, sometimes you're so far off in your directional approach that you know, you need people to talk back to you to tell you that you were so far off. But in general, it's a combination of the explicit and the implicit. And then just in terms of the where, I think the biggest insight that I've been trying to push within our organization is that we're not only trying to get the data from inside of our organization, but we don't own audiences. Nobody owns audiences anymore. We share audiences. So we can actually find our audience in many places, so we can find just as much information from our audience on another site as we can on our own, and use that to help derive the way that we actually form our experience.
You just something you said there. Have you got any examples of where you found out you were so far off? Yeah. It's just because it is quite good to give a steer. Is there anything specific?
So one of the things that I think was really interesting, so I joined BET approximately a year ago, and there were three things that people were almost screaming about within either groups, our contact us, or our blogs. One was our lack of news coverage. So we were really far off. In fact, there are public statements from people at our company saying that we weren't really about news, we were about entertainment. That's what the E stood for. And it turns out, you know, lo and behold, people really wanted news. And, you know, I can talk about how we've revectored and how that turned out to actually be true. The second thing is they were very, very focused on how we represented our community in terms of the imagery, et cetera. And it's a little bit conflated with some of the challenges people have with hip-hop videos in general. But the point was, we thought if it was a popular video, then it was okay to show. Mm-hmm. And so that was way off. The answer to that was no. That's actually not the case. People are actually more sensitive to the imagery than they are to the popularity. And then I think that the third issue was, and you know, another one that was probably a little bit more nuanced than anything, is that people actually had a very, very strong opinion about what good programming was. And you know, we sort of thought of it as, okay, well, if people like it, they like it. If they don't care, right? We thought the answer was apathy. We didn't think the answer was, you know, actual passionate dislike. Yeah. Right? And it turns out that we got a lot of passionate dislike on some of the issues. And, you know, getting that data from, you know, some of our online forums actually was good to be able to flow back into the programming team and say, you know, this isn't a situation where people just don't care. Mm-hmm. This is a situation where people actually care a lot and don't like the direction this is taken. And I think that this has actually been very instructive and very helpful in terms of the way that we've revectored, not just on the online side, where, just to sort of close the loop on the first point, news has actually been our #1 channel for the last 2 months. But it's also been helpful in the programming, where we've been able to derive, I think, some very compelling hits, not only around the gospel segment, which people seem to voice some affinity for, but also around sort of the uplifting, overcoming struggle reality series.
Okay. Ira?
Thanks. Ira Rubenstein. I'm the head of Marvel's new global digital media group. Your question was about the last 2 years and technology's changing. And I enjoy talking about the consumer because all of us here are consumers, and we're all consumers of either entertainment products or technology or what have you. And speaking of entertainment, I don't think much has changed in 2 years. What I think has changed is just the tools. And you can, if you go back to pre the web, whether it was the forums on CompuServe or Prodigy or even on AOL, the consumers were always talking to you. It's just that the media companies might not have been hearing it because no one actually had a connection. To today, where there are some media companies, we're one of them, we actually have a Twitter account. And so we're actually trying to engage in a conversation to be more proactive.
Does that work?
It's growing, and I think what we're seeing is we have to engage in a conversation with the consumers where they're at. Yeah. So whether that's on Facebook, MySpace, and Twitter, or on our own site, we're actively trying to engage in a conversation. And for Marvel, we have a history of that conversation back to the days when Stan Lee was editor-in-chief, and he would, answer letters, and they'd be printed in the books, and people always felt part of the Marvel universe, as opposed to some of the other comic book companies. And people who are probably in the audience, you always felt at Marvel, you were part of it. You weren't talked down to, you were in the club. And so we are working on ways to further enhance that using the tools and technologies that are available today.
Okay, and Fred.
Hi, my name is Frederic Joseph, Publicis Group. I'm the CEO of Z Digital, which is the digital arm of Zenith Optimedia. And I'm the new managing director of VivaKi Nerve Center, which is the umbrella of Zenith Optimedia, Starcom, and Digitas in Europe. I do think that this two-way conversation has a huge impact on the way we are organized. Actually, it has an impact in the way we think our organizations. I think we need to reshape our organizations together to match this new way of interacting with the consumer. I think that the fact that the consumer is now at the heart is new, because in the past 2-3 decades, I would say, we were thinking that the idea was at the heart, the idea was at the center, whether it was the creative idea, whether it was the media strategy, the creative media strategy. We were starting with that at the center, whereas now the fact that the consumer is at the center makes us rethink the way we interact with that consumer. I think that the whole VivaKi organization that we're putting together all around what I would call performance marketing and embedding technology within this organization is all about embracing this new way of talking to the consumer. I think that the fact that we've just, as you might know, acquired Performix from Google, we're embedding Performix within VivaKi, within the Nerve Center. All about thinking how to bond with the consumer, all about thinking how to commit on performance to our clients. all about thinking new ways of understanding metrics as well. Metrics are completely changing with this new two ways conversation that we have with consumers. It's not just about thinking, CPMs, better prices, CTRs, whatever. It's thinking about engagement, return on engagement.
Do you have a specific example? Think of a particular client brief that's been handled in that way that would have been just something completely different a few years ago.
Well, yeah, I think that I won't say that I have a particular example in mind, but it's the whole way we manage our clients and the relationships we have with our clients, and the way that we put commitment at first, commitment in terms of performance, which is pretty new, because I would say that in the past years we were more thinking about how we best buy media. The idea was really to put an ad, creative ad, the idea, put the ad, expose the ad, and then think that this exposure had an effect, was efficient. Whether now that we have tools, that we have the technology to understand the efficiency of that ad, and all these conversations that we had this morning about micro targeting and understanding how to build that conversation with the consumer is all about commitment on performance. So I think it's more about the relationship that we have with our clients that has changed, and it's putting the consumer at the center makes us also putting ourselves in a danger zone, which is we need to commit on performance.
Yeah. Now, obviously, given the title of this, I'll open it to questions as early as possible. So if anyone has anything they want to ask, just put your hands up. But I'll sort of, yes, gentlemen here.
Hi, I'm just curious, what percentage of your audience do you think actually actively take part in blogs and talkbacks and so on and so forth? I mean, you read a lot about it, but the impression I've always had it's a very, very small vocal minority.
So we've been actually tracking that quite a bit, and the answer is, at least for our site, that tends to be true. Now, I would actually posit that that's true in general, and one of the things I give O'Reilly a lot of credit for is just sort of making the connection between patterns between community formation and development and the open source community, and sort of patterns of creation, editing, and usage in Web 2.0. We see that there's a range in terms of our utilization of the commenting and talkback. What we find, if you sort of think about the rule tends to be something like a 2-10-88 kind of thing, where 2% actually is doing hardcore content creation, and then 10 people are usually doing some form of editing or rationalizing or whatever, and then everybody else just sort of participates. For really well written and lightning rod types of blogs, we find that we can get as high as 15 to sometimes as high as 20% comments, right? And that's if it's a lightning rod, right? But that is a rare, almost anomaly type of a situation. Usually it's high single digits if we're doing reasonably well, and that's comments. And I think comments has a tendency to be more of that middle range in the rule, so that sort of makes sense. Just in terms of the user-generated types of activities, so like in the communities that we drive, usually it's 1% or less of the people in our communities actually do real content creation. And I separate content creation from just posting, right? So there's people who just post stuff, and that's a form of user-generated material, but it's not user-created, right? So user-created material, it's 1% or less. User-generated material, so that's both created as well as sort of lifted from someplace else and posted. That gets to sort of high single digits, sort of the 10% range.
Toby, I mean, you've probably got the biggest scale audience on that. Sorry, just to...
It depends on the product, and it depends on the skills and how well you do the community management part of it, because it's not just about putting the tools in place, but it's also about engaging directly with the community, taking their feedback and improving the tools and improving the experience. So take an example. So Delicious Honey has probably 3 million users actively every day contributing, but there's 1 billion page views every day in terms of people viewing all the URLs. Yahoo Answers, which is reached about 170 million users now, with 700 million answers in the database. Probably about 7% of our users have contributed to that, but 7% of 170 million is still 10 million people. And the key to that is to work within the communities and break them down to micro communities. So in Answers, we've got people who are absolutely passionate about making cherry pies, and we route all the questions about making, pies or anything to do with cherries to those people, just like we help. We've got people who are passionate, who are brain surgeons, and helping answer questions on brain surgery. So a lot of the skill is in helping get the most out of the experts and tapping into the expertise, and then also helping provide recognition and status, just like you see in World of Warcraft or some of these other communities, to sort of the experts. So it is still a minority, but it's people who are willing to take the time and have the knowledge, and you don't want necessarily just everybody contributing everything, because that probably will bring down the quality.
I would just add that the conversation also doesn't always take place on your site. And for us in comic books, there's enough other comic book sites out there. That's where the conversation is also happening, and you have to engage there. Now, for Marvel, we do represent 50% of the publishing world right now. So a lot happens on our site, but a lot happens off, and you can't ignore that.
But to push that argument a bit further, some would argue that actually, when people like ourselves or BT or yourselves host community activity of some kind or another, it's quite small numbers. Actually, we shouldn't be doing it. We should be content. That's what you should do. Fred should stick to putting ads out in the world. Actually, if you wanted to have communities, they can go there and do that on Facebook, let them do it on Twitter, but actually provide the content. That's what you do really well, and don't pollute it with all this chaos. Yeah. I just wonder what you think of that.
It's funny because I did think that for a little bit, and I recently changed my mind. We were talking about how we were going to enhance our website and our strategy and around community, and what really hit me is why we needed to engage in putting in some technology to improve our community structure, was there's a lot of Marvel closet fans, and there are people who don't necessarily want people to know that they're a Marvel geek on their Facebook page, where they can come to our area and be with their fellow geeks. And I think that's true, and I think that's why you're starting to see, whether it's the WWE or some of these other brands and entertainment brands, hosting and embracing very similar Facebook-like or MySpace-like tools to engage their fans.
I was just going to say we've done it both ways. In October we did a partnership with MySpace around a competition called the Hot 16, where it was really a hip hop battle. Artists would submit their rap on top of music that was provided by Jermaine Dupri, and it eventually was judged by Jermaine Dupri with an assist from the community to vote for the finalists that he would choose from. So we did that, and now we're also in the process right now of our own community around gospel. So if you think about our show Sunday Best as being like a gospel version of American Idol, we have a community casting site right now where we're basically allowing people to upload their attempts at gospel singing and have the community vote for that. And in a similar process, our producers are going to choose from the finalists. And what we've seen is that we get tremendous traction either way, right? I think that the benefit of doing the MySpace partnership, which I think went extremely well, and at least what they told me is they thought so too. You have probably the largest hip hop community online with the group that probably has the largest hip hop on air audience for a hip hop event, which was our Hip Hop Awards, and it worked well. I think that what you find with our Sunday Best is that it actually provides a payoff And so we're attracting people who are both interested in the show and who want to be on the show. And so it seems like it works if it has a purpose. I don't think that, media companies should try to be a MySpace or a Facebook, but I think if you have a targeted purpose, it works.
Simon, I would also add that, I posit that a closed community approach is gonna fail. I think we all see that. I think Esther had the panel this morning. We talked a lot about how the importance of portability of data and information, and that we are in a world of cloud computing. We're in a world of web services. People want to engage in conversations around content with their own data, wherever and whenever they want on any device.
Except closet Marvel geeks who want to.
Well, but they may find another closet to do it. It may not be on Marvel. It may be somewhere else. We can't resist that trend. I think we have to be open to that, and that's why a lot of what we're trying to do as a company is to be more of a platform and try to enable a lot of these communities to take place and provide APIs and access to the data for lots of services to flourish and communities to grow all over the web.
I'm curious to know, when you have individuals speaking to individuals, that's a general accepted practice, but when corporations are talking to individuals outside their corporate sites, does that create any problems with the people with whom you're communicating? Do they think you're eavesdropping, intruding, listening in on their conversations, or is it just becoming a generally accepted practice as well?
So that would be like, I don't know, a soft, someone from Adidas going onto a talk board about,
right.
About clothing. Fred.
I think that there's one key rule that we need to keep in mind when we go into those in those areas. It's that we shouldn't fool the consumer, never. So the one key that we need to keep in mind is being transparent about who's speaking. So if there's a brand speaking to a consumer, brand speaking in this kind of environment, they need to speak openly, making sure that it's obvious that this is the brand that is speaking to those people. The worst thing to do is to try to hide this, because there's an immediate backlash. That's absolute. That's the rule for disaster. So if there's one thing that I would recommend for people trying to, push clients or brands to talk to people, is making sure that this is absolutely clear, transparent. I think it's a good one of the other positive aspects of this new conversation is that it's totally transparent. We need to be totally transparent. And talking about the way we reshape our organizations, I think that being transparent is also being transparent about the pricing of our services to our clients. And like when I was saying that we are aiming to commit on performance, I think that this is all about making sure that this whole model works in a transparent way, and I think it's also a good.
So just as an example, if one of your clients was being trashed on a particular talk board and they came to you and said, "What should we do about this?" What would you recommend?
Well, hopefully it didn't happen to me. So that's the first thing. It happened to clients within my group, but not to me personally, so that's a good thing. But the one thing that I would recommend to a brand when they start engaging with those conversations is to engage with a bodyguard. That's how I would illustrate it. When Prince Albert is coming in here, speaking in here, he comes with his bodyguard discreetly, but he has bodyguards around him. And when we put our clients into that kind of environment, we need to ring fence them with bodyguards, and the bodyguards to me are the moderators. So when you go in those environments, you need to think before very thoroughly about how you will ring fence those brands and make sure that you have a very thorough, very precise, very clear environment of moderators, because otherwise that's the passport for disaster.
Can I disagree?
Yeah, please do.
I think that my favorite example, if you type in Land Rover Discovery into Yahoo search or any other search engine of your choice, The number one site that will come up is LandRoverDiscovery.com. The number 10 site will come up is called The Truth About Land Rover Discovery. And it was a blog that was started by a guy who bought a Land Rover Discovery that blew up after a week. They refused to believe him. He sent them pictures. He called them, letters. No response. After 3 months of begging, he finally got a new one. A month later, that car blew up as well. This time they absolutely refused to believe him. They wouldn't take his phone calls. He started a blog called The Truth About Land Rover Discovery. It became the number 10 most popular search result. He has got such a big audience. He's actually selling advertising on the site from car companies, and they're literally go to your search engine, check it out.
But Toby,
and you know what? You look at all the postings in there, and all he says is, "Just talk to me, please talk to me. Come and have a conversation with me." And there's people on that have posted incredibly long comments at how he changed their life. They were going to buy a Land Rover Discovery, and they bought an X5 just because Land Rover wouldn't talk to them. And I don't think it's that hard. I think it's engaging in that conversation. You can't, as Fred, you
With
can't
a bodyguard.
hide. But why do you need a bodyguard? Why not be open and
what
honest?
What I'm saying is, I'm not saying that you shouldn't let go. What we tell our clients is, you should let go. People are talking about your brands, and that's fine. You need to let go. That's for sure. Because there's nothing you can do anyway. So you need to let go. And clients usually are very surprised and amazed by the number of comments and blogs and fan pages that they have around their brand. So that's not what that's fine. I'm not talking about this. I'm just saying that when the brand is speaking, when the brand is pushed in those environments, in that case, it's not the brand that sells. It's someone who starts a conversation about the brand. It's totally different. And when I push clients to take the lead and speak to those people in those environments, what I want to make sure is that this first of all, this is clear to the consumers, and second, that they're ring-fenced. I'm absolutely convinced that it can go wild, and I mean there are a number of examples where it has been a disaster because the moderator system didn't work.
Well, I think they were trying to control the conversation.
Spencer's waving a big T at me, so we're going to have to say thank you very much to everyone, and we'll have to leave it there. Okay, thanks.